get to as many as we can. I'm really excited for the topic today around delivering predictable prospecting performance, because one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot with prospecting is workflow and sort of the habits and things behind creating a predictable prospecting machine. We tend to focus a lot on like what the email should say or putting a video in there and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk to than Marylou Tyler, who is a sales strategy and enablement expert. And she's also the best-selling author of 2 books on sales process improvement, Predictable Revenue, and one of my personal favorites, Predictable Prospecting. That's always on my list of top 3 prospecting books to recommend. And she's worked with companies like Apple, Prudential, UPS, all with the goal of consistently growing revenue by activating and optimizing her predictable top-of-funnel sales opportunity frameworks. Marylou, I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and share with the audience today.
Yeah, this is going to be super fun. To get started, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. I thought it might be kind of cool to talk about. We're doing a lot of consulting, it sounded like, for several years, and then now you're actually in a role where you're working with a team again.
Yeah, I started consulting back in the early 80s, actually. I was never one for corporate America. I'll say that right now.
Yeah.
I did my best, and then we had a management team come in when I was in sales, and I looked at them and I'm like, no, this is not going to work. So what I did was I went to my clients and I said, hey, I'm going to be spinning off to a consulting firm. At the time, we were doing call center toolkit software, and I'm also an engineer. I'm a programmer by trade. So I was able to take my clients and transition into a service and support type of role, going out as a consultant. And I've never looked back from there. But I did consult in large call center design. I did a lot of project management, and we had predictive dialing, which is kind of the precursor to predictable revenues email system.
Yep.
So I was really well versed in that and loved the phone, loved the phone. But then, I was asked to do a project from a company in Seattle, a startup, that they said, Marylou, do the stuff you do with the phone for email for us. And I was like, what? So I started looking online. Consultants, we don't always know the answer, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I found a webinar that was being done by Brian Carroll and Aaron Ross. This was back in 2002, I think it was.
Yep.
So we hit it off instantly and started working together, and Predictable Revenue was born in 2011. And then from there, I was doing consulting, working on large projects. And then I was working with this one client out of Denmark that, in fact, a lot of the folks are on the line this time. So they'll keep me honest. But there was just a love between me and the client and me. I mean, we just hit it off really well. And so some of the gals that are online here started up with me in this company fresh out. I mean, we were trying to figure it out. We had no tools. We were doing everything manually. Yeah. And I left them in 2018, and they started hitting their numbers right away. They were excellent. They continue to be excellent. In fact, most of the team is still intact from when I left. And then I came back because the CEO just offered me a really great opportunity for a 3-year project. He says, even you, Marylou, could do a 3-year project. Don't worry. And so I took it. So now I'm on the front line. I am working with the teams, trying to generate revenue, going after a base of people who do not like to respond and are very picky. And so I feel all of you with they're not getting back to us. So I'm working with them now for another 2 years, and then we'll see what happens after that.
No, that's super cool.
Yeah.
In terms of the predictability part of this, because that's like your thing, is creating more predictability in the process and the results. How have you seen the strategies and tactics that a team or an individual uses to create that predictability? How have you seen that change in the last 20, 30 years since you've been doing this? What from a strategy level has changed?
I think, we have multi-channel now. So back in the old days when I was in selling, we had the phone and we had mail, not email. We had mail,
direct mail.
Microsoft wasn't invented yet. Apple wasn't invented yet. The mouse wasn't invented yet.
They
So
didn't have
that's
trackpads either.
we used to go to the library to look at this gigantic book for lists. We just, there was nothing available.
Yeah.
So, transition from that, the components are the same, but the availability of leveraging technology has really changed.
Hmm.
But the planning part is still the same. And that's where I think a lot of people are suffering right now, because they have all these great tools, but how do you leverage them in a way that maximizes your return on effort, that allows you to multiply your results? Because
Yeah.
you should be able to 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x with these tools. But I think, we have to go back to basics again in the whole planning part of who am I talking to? Where are they in their head, level of awareness? How much do they know about me, my company, my product, my service? And what do I need to do consistently to advance people from where they are right now to where I want them to go in what period of time? So that,
Hmm.
I think that aspect of what we had to learn because we had paper and pencil is
Yeah.
lost now, because the tools do so much of that for you. So the tools were great in terms of leveraging at scale, but it's really garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't put in the right fuel, like I tell my team, we can't put banana fuel in the rocket ship. It just doesn't work. So
Yeah.
you don't do that. If you don't get that rocket fuel in there, then it's going to sputter and you're not going to be happy with the results.
Yeah. I kind of feel like an appropriate analogy a lot of times of what I'm seeing is the equivalent of someone going in to do a workout, and now they have pre-workout, so they can go twice as hard and they have twice the amount of energy, and they just do a bunch of random shit and they burn a lot of calories, but it doesn't really align with like their actual fitness goals. It's not either
Right.
helping them lose weight or build muscle or whatever. And I see this a lot where the activity, I'm working with a rep right now that says they are required to have 1,000 prospects going in a sequence every week.
Yeah.
And
See,
to get 2 or 3 meetings though.
yeah. Yeah. So the waterfall is broken.
Yeah.
Their waterfall is broken. Now, predictable revenue waterfall from 2011, I still use that waterfall as a baseline waterfall
Mm-hmm.
when I work with clients. That's 1,000 touches yielding. This is all monthly numbers. So 1,000 touches yields 100 meaningful conversations, and we'll go over what that is. Of those 100 meaningful conversations filter down into 10, 15, 18 discovery type calls. And if you look at predictable revenue, pages 99 to 101, that is a predictable revenue selling process. It's a 3-step thing. So you do 10 to 15 of those, and then out pops 8 to 10 sales qualified opportunities every month. Now,
Yeah.
that's a baseline. I have this team that I'm working with right now is getting response rates that are off the charts. So I can't even use the predictable revenue model because it's too low, the results
Yeah.
we're getting. But again, you may start with that model and realize, oh my gosh, we have to double that. But the point is, you have to have some type of waterfall and understand where it's leaking, where it's lagging, what are the ratios between each of these steps, and can I improve the conversion of those steps, and what do I need to do that? A lot of people don't look at the data and see right before their eyes that, oh my gosh, I'm getting stuck at the AWAF call, the Are We a Fit call. It's not going to a discovery call to find out what those next steps are. And they're parked here for too long.
Yeah.
There's a cycle time, there's a conversion time. The tools today give us that data. They allow us to look at that. We're not necessarily looking at it. And I think that's what a lot of the issues are today with the current process. I'm not saying that means you don't know how to sell. It could mean a lot of different things, but at least the process, the data will amplify and accentuate where you're getting stuck, where things are lagging, where things are leaking out, so that you can start, get them shored up and start to fix those areas one by one.
And with this waterfall, because Brian asked the question, this is 1,000 touches across, this could be multiple touches per prospect is included in that
Correct. I
number.
mean,
Okay.
the rhythm of the touch, it is dependent on the person
Yeah.
who's belly to belly that you're trying to
Yeah.
talk to. It's always a one-to-one conversation, right? Even though you're sending many emails, you're still having a one-to-one. So like my current world, our scientists and pathologists, maybe, I think Lindsay can correct me, and Ashley, 1 or 2 a week is probably, a little shaky. We may want to do one every 4 days, a
Yeah.
touch to that person. And then the other rule with predictable revenue is 3 to 5 contacts per account. So those 1,000 touches could be divided by 3 to 5, which equals the number of accounts, or those 1,000 touches could be 1,000 unique prospects. Not usually in my world, because we're selling up market and the average deal size is beefy. It's going to be greater than 12 to 15,000 a
Yeah.
year in annual recurring revenue. In fact, our thing is 50K is the first stop for us. So you have to look at all those pieces to figure out what that waterfall is. The predictable revenue waterfall makes the assumption you're doing 8 to 10 sales qualified opportunities a month.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 20 right now, then you just have to extrapolate up. But if you're also, like my guys, have great intra and interstage conversion rates, we don't need as many records to accomplish the objective. But the point is, you got to look at these different ingredients to make the recipe that's right for your business, so you can be consistent, so you can scale it if you want.
Yeah. Got it. And just because we had a bunch more people hop in, make sure to hit the Q&A if you have specific questions come up about this. And if it's relevant to what we're talking about, especially, we definitely want to chat about it. Let's dig into this waterfall, because this is a question that I get asked a lot, because usually the framework's not provided by the company for either management or the reps. They have to kind of figure out what the activities look like. And let me know if I'm skipping ahead here, and if you maybe even want to step back further and just look at the process. But if you had to get started with someone that may not actually know how many activities and stuff, are you saying that this waterfall, just start with 1,000, work from there, and then adjust as necessary? What else should we take in consideration when we're just figuring out, like, how many activities? 'Cause that's going to help someone block and tackle their week, right? How many hours do I need to spend on this? Like, where do you suggest someone get started with that?
Well, with our team, we have what's called a day in the life, and that is left over from predictable revenue. And we use a concept called the Pomodoro in order to be able to block our time for activities. A Pomodoro stands for the tomato technique, I think, or something like
Yeah.
that. It's an Italian technique
Yep.
that you do 25 minutes of non-interrupted single tasking activity and then 5 minutes of rest. So what we do is we start figuring out, okay, we have to call people. We might be writing emails. I don't recommend that, but we might be writing emails. We might be doing a social touch and need to look stuff up. We may need to do some research. So what we've done is we've taken those activities and we block them out during the day. Now, if you're a full-time prospector, we like to get you working up to 4 Pomodoros of non-interrupted telephone time. So that's 2 hours. Now, whether you break it up in the morning or the afternoon, my guys design their own call blocks because they're the ones who know best time to call. I'm not going to override what they think is the best time to call, because they're calling East Coast, West Coast, Europe. It just depends on where you're going. But the point is that you do a single task during that time. A lot of you, I've seen, like to get on the phone and then check their email and then maybe do a social thing. And those are all touches, but I want you to do single tasking touches. And what that does on the phone especially is that you get so good in your conversation. Now, some of you are going to say, yeah, Marylou, but I'm just leaving voicemail. Well, we have a remedy for that. Like, it's not really the topic of this conversation, but what we like to do is call with what's known as the bullseye. The decision makers in that center, that's the guy you want, but then there's direct influencers on the next ring out, and then indirect influencers on the ring out from that. So if I'm stuck in voicemail hell in this decision maker, I may go out layers and talk to vendors who might work with the same type of product offering that complements mine, but is working in the same base. I may start working that network, just being on the phone with them. gatekeepers, people who can give you warm introductions. So you're on that phone time, you're looking at things that are not only find the right person, but they're also, who can I talk to that may know some information about this client or initiative or any type of news that I can use in my conversations when I do get that decision maker.
And this is the prospect or the process, excuse me, part of the 3-part prong that we're getting into. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so in this process piece, it sounds like what we need to do is sort of start generally this waterfall method of 1,000 activities per month, which is very doable. 250 activities per week,
Yeah.
especially when you have a little bit of automation helping you with that, that's very, very doable. And then from there, you're kind of looking at the block and tackle portion of this as, if I can do 4 Pomodoros, if I'm an SDR, BDR, and this is my full-time thing, of phone time. I mean, if everyone actually got in 10 hours of uninterrupted phone time per week, you would crush your quota. Like if you actually got that amount of time, but you're working backwards, it sounds like, the activities, and you're plugging in, if I do 2 hours of phone time per day, that's generally going to give me enough of what I need as a starting.
That's going to get you started. And you work up to, we've ramped. I don't push my people day one. I mean, the girls can tell you, we go, 1 or 2 Pomodoros to start, and then we work up to 4. But it's all tracked. It's tracked in the tool that they're doing that. And it's tracked with the response rates and the reply rates and everything that we need to know. And what happens is, over time, and I have, Ashley is a good example. Over time, the phone may not become as important. Why? Because you've developed these relationships. So your phone time that was 2-hour blocks a day may go down to twice a week or 3 times a week, and you get the same result. That's what we're trying to teach here is, you're always looking at, how can I maximize my return on effort? And I'm always trying to look for you to say, how can we multiply your results in the same or less time?
Yeah.
So starting with block time allows you to sort of shrink it. I personally used to do 2 days a week of phone time, 2 Pomodoros, never 4, because my end result was 3 to 5 clients a quarter that I wanted to have in the hopper ready to go. So I knew my waterfall to work it back, and it was consistent. And I could scale it if I want, but I'm just one person. So no, I don't want to scale it. I'm happy with that. But I was always trying to maximize it and optimize it and see what I could do to make it better. So know your activities, but first and foremost, know the audience that you're going to be communicating with. How do they like to consume information? How do they like to hear from you? And those are the blocks of activities that you're going to do in order to be able to continually add value to your prospect based on the rhythm that works for you and them.
Got it. And Luke, this should answer your question, because he was asking a little bit more about this waterfall. So essentially, because I want to wrap my head around this, with 1,000 touches, the ratios that people need to be aware of is, like, how many touches does it take to create a meaningful conversation? How many of those meaningful conversations are going to get converted into a meeting? And then how many of those turn into hey, should we work together? Like a qualification call, or are we a fit call, I think is what you call it. Yeah. And then the ratio of SQLs. And then if you know those ratios, that'll help you map out the activities. Is there any other insight you can tell us around? I love the Pomodoros. I think is a very underrated method. It's super, you could just get a free app off the internet or on your phone and run the Pomodoros with. Any other block and tackling type of things that you recommend when someone knows, like, okay, I know how many activities, I know what the activity looks like, but in terms of choosing where to place it on their calendar and make sure they actually follow through with it, any other insights you can share around that?
Well, I think really look at the people with whom you're trying to have conversation. A lot of people, your managers are really guilty of this. They give you a number and say, go do this. But if you're working, I have 3 different types of personas. I have an IT person, a marketing person, and a salesperson that I could potentially talk to in order to get to a sales qualified op. They require very different types of conversation and language. Marketing people are really happy. IT people are really grumpy. And salespeople are somewhere in the middle. So I have to be able to organize my workflow depending on what my list looks like in order to meet the activity goals that I have set. So there's not just the activities though, there's movement and advancement through the pipeline that you overlay over that. So once you have your numbers, then you're looking at velocity of how many do I move from that cold conversation to a high level, are we a fit call? And then how many of those move to a more, should we work together? Are we a good fit? Can I meet your peer people? Should I bring my people in to meet your people in? You know, however deep you go into the pipeline, there are ratios that also work with pipeline advancement that you want to get a handle of. Again, we have raw numbers to start with. And I love it when students come back to me and say, Marylou, that waterfall is not right for what I'm doing, because I'm better on the phone than your guys are. You know, so I don't need to do 100 meaningful conversations. I can do 50 instead and get 10 to 15 of those discovery calls off of 50 conversations. Great. But the point is, you know your number, right? Mm-hmm. So you can decide whether you want to bump that up and add another Pomodoro in there and overshoot quota and get a great bonus, or just keep it going so that you're hitting your goal every time. That's the beauty of having these metrics and a waterfall and advancement ratio that you at least understand or, you know, can track to see how you are relative to goal. I mean, most of us are very competitive in sales. I know we don't like to say that, but, you know, we're competing against ourselves, if anything. And how can you compete against something that you don't know? It's an unknown. If you have actuals, you need to know the actual to goal numbers in order to see where am I relative to goal. It's so important that you sit down and figure that out. Now, some of you are going to need help with that. So that's why I say, go to the predictable revenue one and start there. And it's good enough for you to blast through it or say, oh my gosh, I need to at least meet that. Why? Because that's phone time. If you end up needing phone time, if that is the top thing versus social selling or email or paper or whatever it is, that's a finite resource. You only have so many hours a day that you can do that. So if you end up doing your numbers and see that, oh my gosh, I need to work for 60 hours a week in order to accomplish my goal, then that job is probably not a good job for you because you don't want to spend that much time.
And there's almost, because we were talking about endurance, you know, sort of before we launched into this, there's almost an endurance mindset here where it's like knowing what you need to do. And the Pomodoros are like your different workouts and just taking it one Pomodoro at a time versus, oh my goodness, I got to hit 250 activities this week, right. Which is, you know, really X amount of Pomodoro sessions. Quick question around this, because Simon Polikoff asked this question: if only I could get senior level internal buy-in for some of these strategies, what do you recommend for someone that is trying to basically say, hey, I'm getting the end result done. Like I'm getting the meetings as an SDR that you need, but I'm not hitting the activity targets. And you're really hounding me to do activity when I am getting the result. Is there anything that you suggest someone like that might do if they're in that situation?
I would have them clarify what is a vanity activity versus a meaningful activity. Because a lot of times management, I love them, but they don't necessarily understand all of this, is they're doing vanity, you know, dials, for example. So what, you know, right? We want meaningful conversations. So what is a meaningful conversation? A meaningful conversation is something that advances your prospect either to the next stage of conversation, or you spin around within the same stage because you've learned something new. So if I call somebody up and say, hi, I'm just checking in, how's life? And you have a nice conversation, that's not a meaningful conversation. Unless they said, hey, guess what? The PO's coming on Friday. Great. You've just learned something new that you hadn't learned that is going to allow you to forecast with more specificity and confidence. So I would say to them, hey, let's track for a month what's meaningful and what's vanity, or what these activities are, and come to an agreement that things that move and advance someone in the pipeline are the ones that I should be tracked against. and everything else is just white noise.
Yeah. So doing a test, it's something I always recommend too, is like kind of just create your own internal case study, with your way of doing things and track it because it's going to get the result that they want anyways. So there you go, Simon.
And you can prove to them with data, because right now
Yep.
they're like, okay, number out of the hat. I mean, like I said, they don't necessarily, they have gut, but you know what? That's hopeful. We want data. We want
Yeah.
substantiated information that we can use to make better decisions.
So, okay, so we dug into the process part of this three-prong piece to creating more predictability with our prospecting. What are the next two things that we should take in consideration to create more predictability?
Well, the actual process of prospecting
Hmm.
and setting up a physical pipeline that you can draw on a napkin,
Yeah.
and basically there's boxes on it that say initial conversation, or there may even be pre-conversation. So pre-conversation, initial conversation, continuing conversation, whatever it is. Those boxes will help you understand where your skills lie in terms of getting good benefit openers, or getting people interested to have a conversation. Or once you have that conversation, are you adding enough value in articulating your value proposition so that people lean in and say, oh my gosh, how do you do that?
Hmm.
Or, wow, I never knew that. Instead of, look, you're like everybody else, hands on hips, tell me why I should talk to you. So nuancing that sales conversation is the next step in order to be able to increase the velocity, so improve your conversion, and then also reduce the cycle times of the time it takes to move people and advance them through the pipeline. Now, the beauty of the sales process is that it amplifies and accentuates where you're getting stuck and where things are leaking. And the other thing it does is it tells you if your list is crappy or not. Because a lot of times people give you list that's horrible to work, and you don't have Ashley and Lindsay can tell you about bad lists because we started with really crappy lists, warm bodies that had no idea why we mattered, why they should talk to us, why were we talking to them. They weren't profiled properly. As soon as you see that, the process helps you identify all those calls, all that conversation that went out of the pipeline because they were not qualified, and where they are falling out. The further it goes up means it's a list issue, that you have a problem with your list. It has nothing to do with your skills. So I think that that's the beauty of the process, is that it helps you really pinpoint where things are getting stuck, where things are leaking out. And there's no ego involved. It's all data that can help you make those decisions to say, hey, manager, stop feeding me crappy records. I can't
Yeah.
convert if you're giving me garbage. I mean, we're fighting right now internally with our marketing department because, we want warmer, qualified, scored leads. We don't want hot beating hearts. We just, our students, we
Yeah.
want people that we can have conversation with. So the quality will go up. But definitely sales skills is the next thing that you're going to want to look at, but it's relative position in the pipeline as to where your skills are maybe not as beefy as you would like them to be in order to advance people through the pipeline.
So the process, it sounds like, is going to drive this skill set component, in terms of like where to focus. So because there's a couple points, it sounds like, in the skill set area that are relevant to the prospecting piece. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned finding the right person, and a couple of people were asking about this, and also that, that sort of message. What should we be thinking about? I know this is something we could talk about for an entire hour on messaging,
Yeah.
but what's the quick and dirty for you in terms of figuring out, okay, am I talking to the right person? Because I need to pick 3 to 5 at every account. And then when I go to reach out to them, what should I be thinking about in terms of, you have a compel with content, I think is what you call it, right?
Yeah.
What should I be thinking about in terms of who to target and then how to get their attention?
Well, we always start with the predictable revenue FTRP script, which I'm
Hmm.
happy to post for you guys to, it's outdated. I mean, it's 2011 people, so
Yeah.
it still works in Europe, but maybe not so much in the United States. But, you know, you're really trying to disqualify them with the find the right person. You're
Hmm.
trying to find those top 3 disqualifiers that you're not going to waste your time on. I always give the example, if I'm selling a Macintosh product and I end up talking to a Windows person, my first question is, are you a Mac user?
Yeah.
And you know, if you can't find the right person, you can still insert the questions that are top disqualifiers to whoever picks up the phone, and they may know. So I always try to leverage, is this a qualified account? I am always trying to disqualify people first.
Yeah.
And that's because we are working with so many records, right? Top of funnel, a lot of records. So I'm blasting through, making sure that I've got only the people that are worthy of my time to continue to advance into the pipeline. Now, that conversation is called the find the right person conversation.
Mhm.
It has call objectives, it has a disposition you're trying to do. If you find the right person, great. You can advance them to the next step, whatever your next step is. For us, it's that AWAF call. Great, I'm glad I found you. Give a little bit of your value proposition. You know, I'm sure that this is something that you may want to bring in other people. What's the common process that you use to start these conversations? And does it make sense now for me to reach out to these people, or will you do that? Now, this is a complex sale where you have 3 to 5 stakeholders, so you've got to kind of move it down by identifying more people. But that first FTRP call has a disposition, yes or no.
And this is a cold call. If you're just calling in, you've identified that, hey, there's a couple people that I think are the right fit. This is a cold call, this call, or is this something that you set up?
It could be a follow-up call. You
Okay.
know, because usually inbound, gotta love them, but sometimes they
Mm.
don't remember that they came inbound, even though they just filled it out 5 minutes ago,
Yeah.
because they did like a rash of them. The
Mm.
researcher did 20 of them at once. So it can be anything. You can set it and you can do those. We do have in the Pomodoro a find the right person, basically a membership of people that we're going to call, because
Yeah.
your call blocks, you could be doing different variety of sales calls within the call block. Some are FTRP, some maybe are we a fit because they're in a certain period portion of the
Hmm.
pipeline. So the way I organize my Pomodoros is I work them back to front. I do the people who are in qualifying status that I'm trying to pull over the line to a sales qualified op. When I've exhausted those people, I go one up and get the people who I'm trying to still see, are we a good fit? If I have to organize other people. And then when I finish those people, I go up to the FTRP cold call or warm call follow-up or referral call or whatever it is
Hmm.
that more top one. And I work my pipeline every day when I'm doing Pomodoros from bottom to top. Why? Because I'm trying to get things forecasted so I can get my bonus and my commission check.
Yeah.
That's the more important place to work. And then I work my way up.
So part of this in the skill set area is kind of funny to me because a lot of salespeople that I talk to, they're prospecting as if in a stage further along than they actually are. So they're talking about their product or service in a way where they're actually trying to almost sell it to the person on a cold call,
Yeah.
versus if you just had this mindset of, I just need to use this opportunity to find out some information about this company, and this person that I got a hold of might be able to tell me if they're the right person to talk to about this or if someone else is. And you make that the purpose of the call, almost this, like I always say, lead with curiosity versus trying to sell your stuff. Just start a conversation with the person.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, that's going to be a pattern interrupt in and of itself because they're so used to getting hammered with people trying to sell stuff to them and set up meetings. And what you're suggesting here is just, hey, just find out if they're the right person to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah. We call it mapping call. We call it
Yeah.
FTRP when basically the mapping call is kind of looking around to see, you know, where are these people? Now, some of you are probably thinking, Marylou, there's technology that tells us the right person. I'm like, no, there isn't. If you have marketing as your persona,
Mhm.
And there's some companies like Gartner who has 35 different marketing titles. How the heck am I going to know which one of those 35 people are going to be the person who's working on this type of project?
Yeah.
So yes, technology will help us, but we still need to sort of kick the tires and make sure, hey, I'm not sure if I'm in the right spot. The lost lamb approach
Yeah.
sometimes works, again, some of this stuff is old. Some of this, you just got to try it. What I want you guys to remember from Marylou's talk is test and measure,
Yeah.
because you're going to be able to craft your unique selling strategy. But these are the tools and the building blocks that I'm teaching you to get to the point where you will have your own way of doing this. And you will know that if I pour this much into the top, I'm going to get this much out the bottom. And
Yeah.
that's really what it is. Now, the sales skills, though, is really important because each of those conversations has a level of planning that you're going to want to do, maybe just at the outset and then practice it. But there's definite call dispositions and objectives for an FTRP call versus an
Hmm.
AWAF call versus a discovery call. So those are the three kind of big areas that you can start practicing. We just did a thing in my company where everybody put in their benefit opener. Write your benefit opener. We're going to practice them in role play in our global huddle because we do huddles all the time for stuff like that. And it's just amazing how crappy we can get if we don't practice our benefit openers. But again, those are sales skills. You build that into your Pomodoro even. We have a Pomodoro for building our sales skills. We have a Pomodoro for doing our phone time. So the consistency, as you mentioned, prospecting is an endurance activity, which means that you've got to practice things all the time. Otherwise, you do get rusty.
I love that. Okay, quick question here from that I think is really relevant from Fazan Yusuf. In the current scenario, calling doesn't, and I figured because you're dealing with this right now,
Oh, yeah,
calling doesn't really work out as many are not in their offices. What are some other strategies that you would suggest for this sort of cold outreach in terms of getting hold of people?
Well, there's a number of different things you can use. It depends on your list again. Now, our experience is we did not have individual line numbers or cell phone numbers or extension numbers for our list of people. So when COVID hit, we were shut down like day one. So we couldn't call the brick and mortar. No one was there. What do you do? Our list was horrible. We didn't have a way to get to people. So what we did was we switched channels to LinkedIn. And it wasn't something that we had used because we were so successful with the phone. And they were able to hit the ground running, that team, and switch those conversations to LinkedIn and do connect messages, just do sort of, hi, I am reaching out to you, hope your family is safe and well and blah, 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 blah for COVID. Is this a good platform to continue our conversation? And it's more permission-based versus using the phone. But there are a multitude of channels that your people engage on. So when you lose one like we did, then you've got to find another one. And it's dependent on your person, the persona. How did they switch over when COVID hit? Our guys kind of went to LinkedIn. And we went crap. Don't let me tell you anything else. I mean, we went to nothing in our SQL production. We dipped really low and then have come back up. But we started monitoring, and we were lucky in that we had Europe who went COVID crazy first. So we saw what was happening with them, and we were able, because of the data, we were able to plan with management saying, we're not going to hit our numbers. Here's what we think we can do. Deal with it, management team, because we just lost a channel that is our primary channel for generating opportunities. So I would say that try different channels, but it's always based on how the person that you're trying to have this one-on-one conversation with is consuming information, where they're hanging out, and then start working on maximizing that channel for conversation, realizing that something like LinkedIn is very permission based. I said this yesterday on a call I was on. I have 500 connect requests, it used to be I could delete them all, but now I have to look at them one-on-one before I delete them. And almost everyone says, hi, we have something in common. It's like, how is that serving me by you
Yeah.
saying that? So really think about what you said before. It's not feature benefit, people. It's results, protection, increased productivity, improvement, security. What is it that you can offer them to increase their workflow, to add more value to their workday? Those are the messages that you need to put on these social channels, not, hi, it looks like we're the same person.
Yeah. It's
Delete.
funny. I put up a message or a post on LinkedIn yesterday. I put a screenshot of, because I save all the cold emails I get, and I highlighted in red the first lines of all the emails. 90% of them were, I'd like, I would, I want, and I was like, if you just put a you at the beginning, or you are, or your, excuse me, or something is awesome, or something was really cool, or whatever, that type of messaging works really well. And it sounds like for Fazan, hey, if the phone's not working, hit LinkedIn. And I would suggest like direct dials. If you can get direct dials, they work really well too. If you can get people's cell phones and that sort of stuff, the pickup rate's really high in certain industries right now if you're able to get cell phones.
Yeah, and if your people don't mind texting, I mean, I have a client. That's another way, but our guys would kill us if we did that. I mean, they would just like block us forever. So, the thing is the channel is going to be dependent on the person with whom you're trying to start conversation. And as you pointed out, flattery works really well as curiosity. So, test different ways of opening.
That's how we met, actually. I sent you a cold email to get into the podcast.
Yeah. And I love it. I love when people reach out to me. On my website are my office hours. On my website is my phone number. You know how many people have called me? Like 2.
It's crazy.
So it's just interesting. So when I do get something that is interesting, I am like celebrating, doing the happy dance over here because someone's actually reaching out. And I love it. I really love it a lot. But I think, to further answer your question, really think about, how am I adding value to this person and what channel are they switching over to? And you're going to have to test it, and don't give up. Never give up, because if you keep fine tuning and optimizing, you will get to the goals that you're looking for. This is not rocket scientist stuff. Mm-hmm. All it is, though, is pleasantly persistent and patience to get to your goal.
So Dennis Champagne asked a really good question that I think you have such a great perspective with, since you're working with a team right now too, in terms of like, how do you reconcile automation versus personalization when reaching out, especially to the C-suite? When you look at those activity targets, how do you determine how much of it should really have that sort of hand touch, to it versus something that's just completely like an automated follow-up that might not have much personalization in it?
I like to first and foremost look at the number of records. So if you think of a sliding scale, if you have a ton of records, if you're up here, then you're going to be leveraging more automation, but data-driven automation. So since we're smarter now and have data elements that we can embed in our databases, we can mail merge, if you will, information that makes it seem like we're personalizing to the prospect, but we're really not. We're taking the data out of the database. So if you have a lot of records, you got to go that way. Otherwise, it's insane. When we did predictable revenue, we didn't have any tools. So we did 25 personal emails a day. That was our number. So if you just heard me a little while ago say 50 touches a day, 250 a week, we had to, make up those other 25 with other activities. But email was a big portion of that for us, but it was all manual at that time. When my team started, just when I started with them, they were all manual. They didn't have a tool until probably 4 months after we went through this process together, because I wanted them to learn the manual process of predictable revenue before we started adding a stack of all these wonderful tools that would make bad habits out of them. And I didn't want that to happen. So I think, if you're personalizing lots of records, talk your management team into data-driven personalization, because you can't do it any other way. As you start sliding down, or if you have key accounts, Or if you have these, what I call whale or jump accounts, where you would just like give anything to have somebody respond to you, those guys I would hyper personalize. But other than that, data driven looks like personalized if you
Yeah.
do it correctly. And
Yeah.
I will now admit to all of you, I don't do personalization in any of my emails. I use data driven metrics, and I use certain things, certain fields that I know are going to be flattery, curiosity, mystique, alarm, whatever I need to say to the different groups that I work with. That data is sitting in a field that gets merged into my email.
Yeah. We do something very similar too, where like because we have a couple of VAs and they help with, anytime I'm doing outreach, and I just tell them there's like 2 or 3 patterns of things I tell them to look for, but they aren't like handwriting the email. It's, again, the first line of the email is just a merge tag and they throw in the first sentence or two. And you can do it sort of at scale like that. And you can, another example of this would be like if you're reaching out to construction companies, which one of our clients is, they always have a portfolio on their site. So if you just scraped like the name of a portfolio item or like a project that they did and have that in as a merge tag, that's like such little work. Something you could do hundreds of these in an hour, like pretty quickly, and you could just throw it all in there. And so it sounds like when you think about personalization, there's like a sweet spot of like kind of like your deal size and then the universe of prospects where you just got to figure out the sweet spot of how much effort versus return.
Yes.
And what did you say before? You said test and something?
Measure.
Test and measure. That's kind of where all this stuff, I think people are kind of looking for their specific like customized workout plan, but you have to kind of make that for yourself. You just got to try it and see what works best for you and test and measure.
Management is crazy thinking that we have to personalize everything. We don't. If we have a really good email body that articulates why change, why now, why us, in a value proposition that's compelling, that resonates with our prospect, then we don't need to personalize everything. I mean, we did a test. We put the company name in the subject line and it got, 60% response rate. That's all we did. The body was the same, but we put company and then our company and, just testing different things like that. The biggest lesson here is there are some benchmarks that you can start with, but you're tinkering as you go along. If you don't like tinkering, then prospecting is not going to be your friend because it's all about put your ego in the pocket and try different things. And eventually, and it could be eventually 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, you will get to a rhythm that you're like, all right, this is pretty fun. Prospecting should be super fun. You should enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then the activities that the management team has set for you are unrealistic, your list is not good, or you're suffering from your ability to convince people why they should talk to you. And that's a whole different issue than the other issue about, am I getting good workflow? And I would say most of the time I'm finding workflow is the problem here. Unrealistic workflow.
Yeah. There you go, Dennis. So we talked about process. We spent a little bit of time on skill set. In terms of the mindset, because you talk a lot about this and have so many good things around, habits and the Pomodoro method and that sort of stuff. We got a couple more minutes here. Is there, again, just some kind of the quick and dirty around the mindset? I know there's 5 levels of habit and habit stacking that you talk about, but because that's like really the key to this, right? It's like, the workflow and you got some of the skill sets down. Well, now you just like, you got to keep doing it, right? It's got to become a habit, consistency. Like, what are some of the things that we should know in terms of mindset and habits and consistency and that sort of stuff?
Well, as you said, the 5 levels of habit. The first level is desire. So you have to have a desire to do great prospecting. Whatever your why is, has to be super strong. So why am I doing this? Why am I getting up every day? Why am I talking to these people who don't want to talk to me? Why am I getting somebody who knows, but it's okay. Figure out your desire. The very next step is repetition. You can't cut corners here. You've got to do the work. You've got to do the Pomodoros. Now you can ramp from the 1 Pomodoro, 25 minutes, up to 4 Pomodoros, maybe split those blocks depending on best time to call or best time to email or best time to social. there's a BTT something that you want to
Yeah.
make sure that you're maximizing those blocks during the day. But repetition will build discipline, which is the next level, is that discipline that you're going to continue to do it. This is an endurance activity. You're going to get better as you go. You don't need to be suave, sophisticated, the most, articulate person on the planet. I'm an engineer and I am an introvert. So
Me too.
I have to really push myself to be able to be open to people. And, it's just something that I've worked on for a long time, but it's a daily thing for me still. It's a daily thing for me to get to that discipline piece. Once you're at discipline, step 3, the next one is basically that you've hit a rhythm and you actually look forward to it. It's called routine. It becomes routine. It's like if you're a parent, you take your kid to school, you make them lunch. It's a routine that you set up. And then finally, it becomes habit. And the beauty of prospecting is that you're not always going to have to do these blocks of 2 to 4 Pomodoros a day, because as you're building your prospecting muscle, you're also learning how to have conversations with people so that they start referring their colleagues, their friends, their peers to you. So these other channels all of a sudden start to become available to you. And that's where my guys are right now. They put the work in for sure, but a lot of them now are taking advantage of these referrals because they've learned in the AWAF call that if they insert a referral type of question or a sort of, a sound bite about referrals and carry that through, then they're starting to hear from people who have enjoyed working with them and want this colleague of theirs. Or if they move to another company, they immediately call and say, oh my gosh, get over here. We need your stuff here because it's not here. So that's the beauty of prospecting, is that you learn how, with the skill set side, to move into other channels. And then the habit side, that mindset, is that repetitive notion of doing this as an endurance activity until you master the ability to get to where you want to go with less time and effort, which is really what this is all about.
Yeah. Awesome. So with process, we really dug into the waterfall, which I think is a great starting place for anyone. 1,000 touches per month, break that down per week and really look at your ratios and adjust as necessary. With the skill set component of this, it sounds like a lot of it is like the mindset almost going into like the call of like, I don't need to sell this person anything in this call. Let me just figure out, like, am I talking to the right people here? And don't assume just because the job title. Yeah.
It's positional because there are different conversations happening. Each of those conversations has different call objectives or call dispositions or conversation dispositions. So understand that these calls and conversations exist and that there's certain things you need to go to, like pass go, collect $200 kind of thing. You got to be able to have certain results or outcomes in order to move. So that's the skill set side.
Love it. And then on the mindset, I love this desire creates repetition, creates discipline, creates routine, creates habit. This is awesome. We're out of time. Where do you want people to go to connect with you? Like, where can people, and I want to share a link to Predictable Prospecting. So like I said, it's one of my top 3 prospecting books that I recommend. So if you guys hit the chat there, go check out the book. It's the most process driven, no surprise, of the books out there. So it's going to talk a lot about language and content and stuff like that. But really this process part, I think, is the neglected part of the process. But where do you want people to go to connect with you and all that good stuff?
Well, you can go on LinkedIn and don't send me that message that says, I think we have something in common. Please don't send me that. But LinkedIn is there, Marylou Tyler. MarylouTyler.com is my website, and there's actually a /swag, stuff we all get, SWAG, which are materials that I put out there, webinars, training materials, workbooks, all the stuff that I've done is sitting out there for you guys to take advantage of if you want to drill down and just, take one piece of this, just do your pipeline, draw your pipeline, see how many people are progressing through, see how long it takes, And that's a great start to understanding where your conversations are leading you and where you need to beef up your skills in order to move people faster through with integrity and empathy so that it resonates with them and they want to take your hand to go to that next step.
Awesome. Make sure to check out the chat. You guys, I shared the link with the swag, and connect with Marylou. Send her a personalized message. Let her know what you thought of the talk today. And before you take off, I have one quick ask. If you've enjoyed the talk today, share it with one person. The replay is going to go up later tonight so people can check it out, but just share the tour, share the talk. Just find one person, a colleague, whoever it might be, share it with one person. And then we have Kevin Dorsey coming up on Thursday to talk about the formula for a winning cold email. So we're going to sort of dig 100-foot hole with cold email. But awesome. We're getting a lot of positive comments here. Thank you for coming on, Marylou. This is a blast. Thanks you for spending some time with us.
Yes, I hope everyone's safe and not going outside and wearing your mask.
Yeah, wear your mask, people.
As I sit here in Iowa where they don't have a mask mandate. But anyway.
Yeah. All right, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Appreciate it. We'll see you later, everyone.